You know, when a big crisis hits, a pandemic, a disaster, you name it, we usually think of sports as just an escape, right? A simple distraction. But what if it's way more than that? What if sports organizations actually have this hidden scientific playbook for helping us not just cope, but heal? Well, let's open up that playbook and see what's really inside.
So here's the big question. Can sports actually help us heal? Is it just a good feeling we get, or is there a real psychological thing happening? For the longest time, we didn't really have a clear answer, but a new framework, just published in the Sport Management Review, finally gives us one.
Okay, so let's start with what we think we know. It's no secret that leaders have always believed in the power of sports to lift our spirits when times are tough. I mean, think back to the COVID-19 pandemic. You had leaders like Boris Johnson arguing that just getting games back on TV, even in totally empty stadiums, was absolutely crucial for national morale. This isn't some fringe idea, It's a mainstream belief. But it leaves this huge question unanswered. How? How does watching a game or following your team actually translate into real psychological resilience? This is where the science gets really, really cool. Researchers have put together this powerful framework that explains exactly what's going on under the hood. And the entire thing, the whole theory, it all hinges on one powerful idea, the social identity approach. It's all about the incredible power of we. Okay, so this social identity approach, or SIA, it's built on a pretty simple but profound idea. Your sense of who you are doesn't just come from your personal traits and goals, the I. A huge part of you is defined by the groups you belong to, the we. And that could be your family, your job, or, and this is key for us, your identity as a fan of a sports team. And what's really interesting here is how this breaks down. We've all got our personal identity, our unique self. But then we also have all these social identities, that shared feeling of being part of something bigger. And in a crisis, that balance between I and we, well, it gets completely flipped on its head. Yeah, when things get tough, that feeling of we, that shared group identity, it stops being just a fun part of life and becomes a critical psychological resource. It's what drives us to work together, to support each other, and to face these huge challenges as one. So, if this sense of we is so powerful, can you intentionally make it stronger? Can you build it up? The answer is a definite yes, and that's where leadership comes in. There's actually a specific playbook leaders can follow to build a stronger, more resilient group identity. And according to the research, it's not random. It's not just a lucky guess. Effective leaders intentionally use two key strategies to really harness this power of social identity when it matters most. Okay, here they are. First, they expand the definition of who's in the group. They literally make the we bigger. Second, they give that new, bigger we a shared purpose, one that is really relevant to the crisis at hand. Let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. This is a perfect example of that first step. I mean, before the pandemic, Manchester City and Manchester United were the fiercest of rivals. The we was strictly defined by team colors. But during the crisis, leaders from both clubs expanded that boundary. Suddenly, the we wasn't just City fans or United fans. It was the people of Greater Manchester, all united in a common cause. They completely redefined the in-group. And here's another fantastic example. A private golf club's in-group, that's normally just its paying members, right? But during lockdown, this club's leadership changed the rules. They redefined their group to include everybody in the community who just needed a safe place to get outside. They made their we so much more inclusive. All right, so once you've expanded the we, you have to define what this new group is all about. The International Surfing Association did this perfectly. During COVID, they shifted the whole meaning of being a surfer. It wasn't just about riding waves anymore. It was about embodying generosity and kindness. They gave their whole community a new, shared purpose that really mattered in that moment. Now, there's a really crucial piece to this puzzle. For any of this to work, the person leading the charge has to be seen as the real deal. They need to be what researchers call prototypical, basically a walking, talking example of the group's new values. And Marcus Rashford is the absolute perfect case study. When he campaigned for free school meals, his power didn't just come from being a famous football player. It came from the fact that he had lived that experience. His personal story made him the ultimate prototypical leader for that cause, which made his message incredibly powerful and trustworthy. Okay, so leaders can build a stronger sense of we. But how does that actually translate into well-being for you and me? Well, the framework outlines
5 specific psychological pathways, and it calls this whole process the SPRINT to well-being. Let's break these down, because this is how that big idea of we turns into personal well-being. First up, social support. That feeling that people have your back, emotionally and practically. Second, purpose. Working for a shared goal gives you meaning, a reason to be optimistic. Third is relatedness, that feeling of connection that directly fights the crushing loneliness a crisis can cause. Then you've got positive in-group norms. The group encourages good behaviors, like volunteering or checking on neighbors. And finally, all of this builds trust, which is the absolute bedrock of any recovery. Now, this whole framework is a really powerful tool for understanding how communities heal, but let's be real, it's not a magic bullet. It's super important to know that it has its limitations. So for this to really work, 2 things are key. First, the sports organization itself has to be resilient enough. It needs the resources to actually lead these efforts. And second, this approach works best in what are called consensus crises, where pretty much everyone agrees on the problem and the solution, like a natural disaster. It gets a lot trickier when there's deep disagreement. So when you boil it all down, the crucial point is this: sports are so much more than a simple distraction. In a crisis, they can become this incredible vehicle for intentionally building and shaping our shared social identity. And that sense of we is one of the most vital psychological resources we have for healing and for recovery. And that leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. If sports organizations have a playbook for turning fans into a resilient community, who else could use it? I mean, what could businesses, local governments, or any other social group learn from the power of the team?